My brother slammed our late father's office door, lifted the deed folder, and told me with our mother nodding behind him, "It is all mine." 3 hours earlier, I still believed grief could not turn blood into thieves. Then I saw my name erased from company records, my keycard denied, and the family lawyer refusing to meet my eyes. What neither of them knew was simple enough to miss and powerful enough to destroy everything they had stolen from me by sunrise the next morning inside that same house. Before I tell you how my own family tried to bury me, before they buried the truth, tell me where you are watching from. If this kind of family revenge drama pulls you in, press like, subscribe, and stay close, because what happened in my father's house did not end with one cruel sentence. It began there. My name is Natalie Mercer, and until the week of my father's funeral, I was the person everyone in the family called when they needed a mess cleaned up, but never the person they thanked in public. My father, Harold, owned a regional commercial cleaning company in Ohio. It was not glamorous, but it was stable, respected, and quietly profitable. He built it over 3 decades, starting with one van, one mop cart, and a list of clients written by hand on yellow legal paper. By the time he died, we had contracts with medical offices, retirement communities, and 3 mid-sized corporate campuses. My brother Grant liked to tell people he was the future of the company. I was the chief financial officer who made sure there would actually be a future. I handled payroll audits, tax compliance, contract renewals, vendor negotiations, insurance, and the endless chain of details that kept the company standing. Grant handled appearances. He shook hands, wore fitted suits, took clients to steak dinners, and spoke with the confidence of a man who had never once been forced to calculate whether a late payment would hurt payroll. My mother Evelyn loved that about him. She said he had presence. What she meant was that he looked like the son she wanted on a Christmas card. I looked like work. Even as a child, the favoritism was so obvious that neighbors noticed it. Grant broke a window, and my father heard that boys had energy. I got an A- and was asked what distracted me. Grant forgot our mother's birthday and got laughed off as charming. I forgot one side dish at Thanksgiving because I was closing the books for quarter end, and my mother told the whole table I had never been very domestic. Family gatherings became performance reviews where I was measured against a standard no one ever bothered to apply to my brother. Still, I believed my father saw me clearly, at least where business was concerned. He trusted me with the numbers, trusted me with the banking relationships, trusted me with the unpleasant decisions. In the last year of his life, after his second stroke, he signed more authority over to me because, in his words, Grant likes the crown, but you know where the kingdom leaks. It was the closest thing to praise he ever gave. When he died, I was still numb enough to think grief might make my mother and brother kinder. I should have known better. The first sign came less than 12 hours after the funeral service. I drove to the company office before dawn because routine felt safer than silence. My keycard flashed red. I tried again. Red. I assumed the system had glitched during the weekend security reset, so I used my backup code. Access denied. The cleaning crew supervisor, Denise, opened the front door from inside and looked at me with that tight expression people wear when they know something ugly before you do. "Natalie," she said softly, "Grant told security you are on administrative leave." I stared at her. "On what grounds?" She looked miserable. "He said ownership changed." Ownership changed. I laughed because the alternative was shaking. That is not how ownership works. Apparently in my family it did. Inside my office had been touched. Not ransacked, not obviously disturbed, but touched in a way only another detail person would notice. The framed compliance certificate on my shelf had been moved half an inch. One drawer no longer stuck the way it always had. The legal pads on my desk were stacked too neatly. Someone had gone through my space and tried to put it back. I opened my computer, password invalid. I went straight to accounting storage where the internal archival files were kept in locked metal cabinets. One cabinet stood slightly open. That cabinet held signature packets for prior ownership, planning board resolutions, real estate transfers, and emergency succession documents. A blue tabbed folder marked Estate Contingencies was missing. My stomach dropped. At 9 that morning, Grant called an all-staff meeting without me. At 9:15, I walked into the conference room anyway. 30 pairs of eyes turned toward me, then away. Grant stood at the front beside my mother and our family lawyer, Stuart Bell. A printed slide on the screen read, "Leadership Transition." Grant did not even flinch when he saw me. "You should not be here. I work here." He gave me a smile that belonged in a cheap courtroom drama. Not anymore. Dad left the company and the house to me. Mom and I agreed a clean transition is best. I looked at Stuart. "Is that what you are telling employees now?" Stuart adjusted his glasses and would not meet my eyes. "Natalie, this is not the appropriate venue." That was when I knew it was real. Not true, but real. They had moved from resentment to paperwork. My mother folded her hands like she was about to lead a prayer circle. "You have always been difficult during emotional moments. Your father wanted peace. Grant can provide that. You were compensated very well for your role." Compensated. As if I had been a contractor, not a daughter who kept the company from bleeding out every quarter while her golden son practiced signatures. Employees shifted in their seats, embarrassed but silent. Grant took advantage of it. "Natalie has been overwhelmed for months," he said. "There were errors in the books. We are reviewing everything." That sentence hit harder than the ownership claim. It was strategic. Ownership could be argued later. Accusing me of mishandling finances poisoned my credibility immediately. "There were no errors in the books," I said. Grant shrugged. "We will see." That was the moment the room changed. Not because people believed him fully, but because doubt once introduced stains faster than truth. I saw it happen in real time. Denise looked angry on my behalf, but two department managers lowered their eyes. One of the newer coordinators began taking notes, like this was a real disciplinary matter. My mother watched me with cold satisfaction, the expression of a woman who had waited years to see her daughter publicly lowered. I left before I gave them the scene they wanted. In the parking lot, I sat in my car with the door open and tried to breathe through a kind of humiliation that feels physical, like a hand pressing against your throat. My father had not even been gone 2 days, and my family had already staged a coup. Then my phone buzzed. It was a fraud alert from the company bank. I still received notifications because I had set up the treasury management system myself, and apparently Grant had not yet figured out how to remove my number from every control layer. The alert showed a pending transfer request from our operating reserve to a newly added holding account I did not recognize. The amount was large enough to trigger dual authorization under our standing protocols. No second approval had been logged. I called the bank relationship manager directly. Her name was Laura, and I had worked with her for 6 years. "Laura," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "freeze any outbound transfer initiated this morning until I verify account authority." She hesitated. "Natalie, I was told you are no longer authorized to issue those instructions." "By whom?" A pause. "Your brother submitted updated officer paperwork late last night." Late last night. While guests were still bringing casseroles to my mother's house, Grant had been at work rewriting control access. "Did you verify the signatures?" I asked. Another pause. That one told me more than the words that followed. "The documents appeared complete." Appeared. I thanked her, hung up, and pulled over 2 blocks later because my hands were shaking too hard to drive. Fraud alert. New holding account. Emergency authority changes filed after death. My office searched. Missing estate contingency folder. Public suggestion that I had mishandled the books. It was all too coordinated to be grief-fueled panic. This had been prepared. I went home, pulled out my personal archive box, and spread years of records across my dining table. I kept copies of everything that mattered, not because I distrusted my family, but because I trusted procedure more than memory. Board minutes, insurance amendments, stock valuation memos, draft succession plans, real estate refinancing documents. My father's emails from the period after his stroke, when he had become obsessed with making sure no one can force a sale after I am gone. By sunset, a pattern emerged. Over the previous 6 months, several internal documents had been subtly revised. Not the core contracts themselves. The cover memos, the summary pages, the routing sheets. Enough to influence a hurried lawyer or a grieving bank officer. A line here repositioning Grant as acting successor. A note there reducing my authority to interim accounting support. A property attachment listing our main warehouse lot as a personal rather than corporate asset. None of it would survive real scrutiny, but together it created the illusion of inevitability. Then I found something worse. In the vendor reconciliation folder, tucked behind a routine insurance binder, sat a scan of a loan covenant compliance report. I never submitted because it was not final. My digital initials had been copied onto the draft. The final version showed healthy liquidity and proper reserve levels. The altered draft suggested cash flow instability and recommended ownership-led consolidation. Someone had used a temporary draft to imply the company needed restructuring under Grant. That was financial manipulation, plain and deliberate. An hour later, Denise knocked on my apartment door. She looked around the hall before stepping inside. "I should not be here," she said. "You are here anyway." She handed me a manila envelope. I was told to shred old accounting duplicates from Grant's office. I did not shred these. Inside were printouts of transfer requests, partial signature pages, and a memo from Stuart Bell's paralegal, asking for backdated acknowledgement formatting to align with prior board dates. There was also a sticky note in my mother's handwriting. "Make sure Natalie is isolated before staff meeting. She gets righteous when cornered." I read that line twice. Not because it surprised me, but because seeing your mother strategize your humiliation on paper does something permanent to your understanding of family. Denise sat across from me, furious now that the truth had a physical shape. "He has been telling people your father lost confidence in you. He said you became obsessive, territorial, unstable after the last audit." I laughed once, hard, ugly. Obsessive is what incompetent men call women who notice details. She almost smiled. Then her face fell again. "There is more. Your cousin Riley is working with Grant. He has been pulling archived boxes from storage and moving them off-site." Riley. My aunt's son. The same cousin who borrowed money from my father 3 times and never repaid it. The same cousin my mother called rough around the edges but loyal. Loyal, apparently, to whoever paid him. That night, I drove to my mother's house to confront them, but I never made it past the study. The door was cracked open. Inside, Grant was speaking in a low, excited voice while my mother poured wine. "I told her it is all mine," he said. "She looked like she might break." My mother replied, calm as rain. "Good. She has needed humbling for years. Your father indulged her because she was useful. He loved you. That is what matters." Grant laughed. "Once the reserve transfer clears, I can pay off the personal debt and move the property under the new entity before she gets a hearing." Property under the new entity. Reserve transfer clears. Personal debt. There it was, embezzlement and asset seizure in the same breath. I should have stormed in. I should have screamed, thrown the door open, demanded answers. Instead, I stood there in the dark hallway and felt something in me turn from wounded into precise. Because at that exact moment, I remembered the document my father had insisted on executing after his second stroke. A contingency instrument Stewart had complained was redundant. A governance backstop tied to one specific threshold of control. It required one final signature to activate any succession transfer involving both the company and the real estate. My signature. And I had never signed it. Once I understood what they had missed, my grief sharpened into purpose. The missing signature did not automatically save me. It did something more useful. It turned their entire takeover into a structure built on speed and intimidation rather than legal certainty. If I moved carefully, I could do more than defend myself. I could expose them in a way they could not explain away as family conflict. So I stopped acting like a daughter and started acting like a forensic witness. I did not sleep that night. I built a timeline. I listed every event from the week before my father died through the staff meeting where I was publicly sidelined. I matched emails to bank alerts, internal routing slips to file removals, verbal claims to written records. I highlighted each moment where Grant or my mother asserted control they did not yet legally possess. I flagged every place Stuart Bell had facilitated action before proper execution of estate and governance documents. I separated what was unethical from what was provably unlawful. Emotion had to serve evidence, not replace it. By dawn, my dining room table looked like a litigation war room. The first call I made was not to the police and not to another family member. It was to my father's oldest business friend, Martin Keene, a retired compliance attorney who had served on our advisory board years earlier before formal board structure was dissolved. He was stubborn, exacting, and almost impossible to charm, which was why I trusted him. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Do not confront them again until you lock down Original's bank history and witness statements. People like this rely on your outrage. It helps them call you unstable." "My own mother is helping my brother steal from me." "No," he said. Your mother is helping your brother steal from your father's estate and from the company. Stop framing it as hurt and frame it as conduct. That sentence steadied me. By mid-morning, Martin connected me with a probate litigator named Simone Avery. Simone had the kind of voice that could cut glass. She reviewed the scanned pages I sent and called back within an hour. They moved too early, she said. That is your opening. The succession packet references a joint execution trigger. Without your signature, there is no valid unified transfer of control under the language your father used. So the company is not his. It is not fully anyone's under the action they took. More importantly, if they used incomplete authority to initiate bank changes and asset movement, they may have exposed themselves to civil and criminal review. That was the first moment I allowed myself to believe I could win. But winning privately was not enough. Grant had already started a narrative inside the company: unstable daughter, grieving son, necessary transition. If I fought only in sealed rooms, he would keep poisoning every relationship I had built. The truth had to become public, formal, and undeniable. Simone advised me to gather corroboration first. You need allies, she said, but not social allies, record allies, people whose statements connect to documents. I began with Denise. We met in the back booth of a diner near the interstate. She brought a notebook where she had written the exact times Riley removed storage boxes and the names of 2 employees who saw him. She also recalled Grant instructing security to deny my badge before any formal internal notice had been issued. Next came Laura at the bank. She could not release everything without process, but she confirmed enough. Updated officer forms had been submitted electronically, then followed by scanned signature pages. The sequence was irregular. The reserve transfer request was entered before all authority changes were fully authenticated. Someone had been trying to move faster than compliance review. Then I reached someone I had not expected to help me at all: Teresa Vaughn, our external payroll auditor. Grant had once flirted with her at a holiday dinner and later mocked her for being rigid. Rigid was exactly what I needed. When I told her Grant had accused me of errors in the books, she sounded offended on behalf of arithmetic itself. I signed off on your controls last quarter, she said. If anyone is implying misstatement, they will need to do it with their whole chest and in front of my work papers. By evening, I had 3 credible support points: internal witness testimony, banking irregularities, and independent validation of my financial records. I also had a problem. My mother had started calling extended family. Aunt Lorraine left me a voicemail that dripped with fake sorrow. Sweetheart, maybe stepping back is best right now. Grant says you are struggling. Your mother is worried. That was how family systems protect a lie. They do not ask what happened. They ask why you are making it uncomfortable. I saved every voicemail. The formal accusation began with a petition Simone filed in probate court, seeking an emergency injunction against further transfer of company assets, real estate encumbrance, and estate disbursement, pending authentication of succession instruments. She attached the relevant clauses, the unsigned trigger page, the suspicious transfer attempt, and preliminary witness declarations. Then she did something brilliant. She had a process server deliver notice not only to Grant and my mother, but also to Stuart Bell at his office during business hours in front of his staff. Grant loved public theater. He had forgotten public theater cuts both ways. The hearing was set fast because of the risk of asset movement. In the 2 days before court, Grant escalated. He emailed management claiming I had launched a vindictive legal tantrum during bereavement and warning staff against communicating with me. He implied trade secrets were at risk. He told one operations manager I had always resented him for being the son Dad chose. That line would have been laughable if it were not so revealing. He was not defending documents, he was defending mythology. On the morning of the hearing, my mother wore cream as if she were attending a luncheon rather than a proceeding tied to fraud. Grant wore navy and looked smug enough to be photographed. Stuart Bell looked pale. Simone wore black and carried 3 binders. When the judge asked for a summary, Grant's attorney tried first to frame the dispute as a private sibling disagreement inflamed by grief. Simone stood and dismantled that narrative with surgical calm. This is not a hurt feelings petition, she said. This concerns attempted exercise of authority under incomplete succession documents, possible misrepresentation to a financial institution, and movement towards seizure of estate-linked assets before required execution conditions were met. She then walked the court through the signature framework. My father's contingency language required final acknowledgement by both named operational successors, where company control and real property disposition intersected. Grant had signed. I had not. Yet actions had already been taken as if the transfer were complete. Grant interrupted twice, the judge shut him down twice. Then came the bank timeline. Laura testified remotely careful and professional. She confirmed the order of submissions and the pending transfer to a newly added holding account. When Simone asked whether the process matched ordinary succession transition, Laura answered, no. It reflected urgency, inconsistent with standard verification pacing. That sentence landed like a dropped glass. Denise followed. She described my denied access, the preemptive staff meeting, and the destruction order related to accounting duplicates. Grant's attorney tried to paint her as disgruntled. Denise replied, I am disgusted, not disgruntled. I loved her for that. Then Simone introduced the sticky note in my mother's handwriting. My mother's face changed for the first time. Make sure Natalie is isolated before staff meeting. She gets righteous when cornered. There is a special silence that falls when cruelty is read aloud in neutral tones. The courtroom found it together. Stuart Bell's attorney objected to relevance. Simone responded that the note demonstrated coordinated intent to exclude a key stakeholder before disputed authority claims were publicly asserted. Objection overruled. Then came the part Grant never saw coming. Simone called me. I testified to the company structure, my father's succession concerns. After his stroke, the location and purpose of the contingency packet and the discovery of the missing execution page. I did not cry. I did not tremble. I answered like a woman who had spent years being underestimated by men in conference rooms. When Simone asked whether I had ever signed the final acknowledgement required for joint succession execution, I said clearly, no. She placed the original page in front of me, blank signature line, blank date line. The judge leaned forward. Grant's attorney argued there may have been alternate intent, oral directives, draft supersessions. Simone answered by producing my father's email to Stuart from 4 months earlier. No transfer involving both operating control and property title goes through without both signatures. Natalie knows why. Grant looked at Stuart then, and for the first time I saw fear crack through his performance. Because that email meant this was not confusion. Stuart had been told. Grant had likely been told. My mother may not have understood the legal architecture, but she understood enough to help isolate me while they pushed through a false reality. The judge granted the emergency injunction. No further asset transfer, no modification of corporate banking authority, no sale, encumbrance, or movement of estate-linked property. Immediate preservation of records. Expedited forensic review. Temporary bar on document destruction. But the true public exposure happened outside the courtroom. Word traveled fast through town because family business scandals always do. By afternoon, 3 employees had texted me screenshots of Grant's earlier leadership email, alongside a local legal notice summary someone had posted in a business owners group. The story forming was not grieving son takes over. It was son jumped the gun under disputed paperwork. By evening, one of our longest-standing clients called to ask whether their service continuity was at risk due to the injunction situation. That was when Grant's world began to collapse. He could bully relatives. He could not bully contract holders who hated instability. He called me just before midnight. I answered on speaker with Simone listening. You have made your point, he said. No, I replied, I have made a record. He exhaled sharply. We can settle this privately. You announced it publicly. You accused me publicly. You locked me out publicly. We are past private. His voice hardened. You are blowing up the family. I looked at the unsigned page still sitting on my table. No, Grant. You did that when you mistook favoritism for ownership. He hung up. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt the strange grief of seeing the final shape of something you have been denying your whole life. My family had not suddenly betrayed me because my father died. They had simply run out of reasons to hide what they were. And yet the first major climax was not the end. The injunction stopped the theft in motion, but it did not reveal where all the money had already gone, who else had helped, or how deep the falsified records ran. What I had done was force the truth into daylight. What came next would decide whether daylight was enough. The injunction did not feel like victory. It felt like the moment the lights came on in a room where everyone had already started hiding things. Within hours, the company atmosphere shifted from controlled narrative to quiet panic. Employees who had avoided my messages began replying with cautious questions. Vendors who had accepted Grant's authority suddenly asked for written confirmation. Even the cleaning crews who rarely cared about ownership politics started whispering during shift changes. Stability had cracked and everyone could feel it. But instability alone does not create justice. It creates opportunity, and whoever organizes that opportunity wins. I chose to organize. Simone made it clear that what we had was strong, but not yet unbreakable. You stopped the forward motion, she said. Now we need to map the damage that already happened. Every dollar moved, every document altered, every person involved. So I built something I had never needed before in my own family. A network. Not based on loyalty, based on alignment. Denise became the center of internal coordination. She knew which employees were quietly angry and which were afraid. She started documenting everything: who said what, who was asked to do what, and when instructions changed. She did it without drama, without confrontation, just steady observation. Laura at the bank worked within compliance boundaries, but she guided us on where to look. Focus on timing gaps, she told me. People who rush paperwork leave fingerprints in sequence, not just content. Teresa, the auditor, went further than I expected. She began rechecking prior quarter reconciliations, not because she believed there were errors, but because she wanted to create a documented baseline that made any manipulation after that point obvious. Then came someone unexpected. Ethan Cole. He had been a mid-level operations analyst, the kind of employee Grant barely remembered, and my mother never noticed. Quiet, precise, and always a little uncomfortable in social settings. He requested a meeting through Denise, not me directly. We met after hours in the empty office parking lot. I was told not to speak to you, he said immediately. And yet you are here. He nodded. Because I saw something I cannot ignore. He handed me a flash drive. Riley accessed archived logistics data last week, he said. Not accounting files. Shipment schedules, contract routing, vendor payment timing. It did not make sense at the time, but after the injunction notice, I reviewed access logs. What did you find? He exported timing data that could be used to predict when large payments clear and when oversight is lowest. I understood instantly. They were not just trying to take control, I said. They were trying to time withdrawals to avoid immediate detection. Ethan nodded. And there is more. He accessed employee credential logs, security overrides. That meant Riley had not just helped move boxes. He had helped create controlled blind spots. Ethan became part of the network that night, not because he trusted me emotionally, but because he trusted patterns. And the pattern he saw was wrong. Meanwhile, pressure from outside began to mount. A regional business journal picked up a short notice about the injunction. It did not name fraud, but it used phrases like disputed succession and asset control challenge. That was enough. Clients called more frequently. One asked directly whether funds had been mismanaged. Grant's narrative was collapsing under the weight of neutral language. Inside the family, things grew colder. My mother stopped calling entirely. Not silence from grief, silence from calculation. Aunt Lorraine sent another message, this time sharper. You are humiliating your brother publicly. This will follow him forever. I did not respond, because for the first time I understood something clearly. They were not afraid of losing truth. They were afraid of losing image. An image was exactly where I was applying pressure. 3 days after the injunction, Simone filed a motion for expanded forensic review, requesting access to personal holding accounts linked to recent corporate transfer attempts. That was the moment Grant crossed from arrogance into desperation. He showed up at my apartment unannounced. I almost did not open the door, but part of me wanted to see what he looked like without an audience. He looked smaller, not physically, structurally. You are dragging this too far, he said, stepping inside without waiting for permission. No, I replied. I am following where you led. He ran a hand through his hair. You think you are smarter than everyone. You always have. I think I read documents before I signed them. His jaw tightened. Dad wanted me in charge. Dad wanted stability, I said. You wanted control. That is the same thing. No, I said quietly. It never was. He paced once, then stopped. We can still fix this. You take a financial settlement. Walk away. I keep the company. We say it was a misunderstanding. There it was, the offer. Not apology, not truth, a transaction. How much, I asked. He hesitated, surprised I engaged. Enough for you to be comfortable. Comfortable. A lifetime of being minimized condensed into one word. I do not want comfort, I said. I want accuracy. His voice dropped. "You are going to destroy everything." I stepped closer. "No, I am going to let it be seen." He left without another word. That night, Ethan sent another message. "You need to look at vendor consolidation records," he wrote. "There is a pattern tied to one external consultant Grant brought in recently." That was new. The consultant's name was Marcus Hale. He had been introduced as a strategic restructuring advisor 2 months before my father died. I had dismissed him as another one of Grant's image hires. Now I pulled every record tied to his involvement. Fees routed through a secondary account. Meetings scheduled during times I was deliberately excluded. Recommendations that aligned perfectly with the manipulated documents I had already found. Marcus was not advising, he was engineering. The network grew tighter. Denise tracked internal shifts. Ethan traced digital access. Teresa reinforced financial baselines. Laura flagged procedural anomalies. Simone connected it all into legal structure. And me, I became the center point where everything converged. Not because I wanted to be, because I was the only one who could see the full pattern. By the end of that week, we had something stronger than suspicion. We had direction. Follow the money, follow the timing, follow the missing pieces. But just as the structure of truth began to solidify, something else began to fracture. Because networks built on alignment still depend on people, and people can be moved. The next betrayal did not come from my family. It came from inside what I had built. The first sign that something was wrong was not dramatic. It was quiet. Too quiet. Ethan stopped responding. At first I assumed he was being careful. The office environment had grown tense, and anyone seen cooperating with me risked being pushed out. But after 2 days of silence, Denise mentioned something that made my stomach drop. "Grant called a private meeting yesterday," she said. "Only a few people. Ethan was one of them." I felt it before I confirmed it. That subtle shift when trust begins to tilt. I called Ethan, no answer. I texted, no reply. Then late that night, Simone called me. "We have a problem," she said. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that weakens timing." She explained that opposing counsel had just filed a response challenging the scope of our forensic request. That was expected. But what was not expected was how precise their counter-arguments were. They knew exactly where we were looking. They referenced internal access logs. They questioned the relevance of vendor timing analysis. They even preemptively discredited certain categories of digital evidence. Someone had given them a map. I did not need her to say his name. "Ethan," I said. Silence on the line confirmed it. The betrayal did not feel explosive. It felt hollow, like something collapsing inward. The next morning it became public. Grant sent an internal memo to all staff. It framed Ethan as a concerned employee who had come forward with evidence that I had been gathering company data improperly after being removed from authority. It suggested I was attempting to manipulate internal systems to support a personal legal narrative. He turned my investigation into misconduct, and Ethan supported it. Not directly, but enough. Enough to create doubt. Enough to shift perception. Enough to slow us down. I sat at my table reading the memo over and over, not because I believed it, but because I understood what it would do. Truth is fragile when it is still forming. And this hit it at the exact moment it was becoming strong. Denise called me furious. He lied. "No," I said quietly. He repositioned. That was worse, because repositioning sounds reasonable. It sounds like perspective. It sounds like doubt. Simone adjusted strategy immediately. "We cannot rely on internal digital mapping the same way anymore," she said. "It is contaminated. Can we still use what we already have?" "Yes," she said, "but we need something stronger, something that does not depend on interpretation. Indisputable." We needed indisputable. Meanwhile, the personal impact hit harder than I expected. Not because I trusted Ethan deeply, but because I had allowed myself for a moment to believe that alignment could replace loyalty. I was wrong. Grant moved fast after that. He gave a statement to key clients emphasizing stability and internal disagreement driven by emotional distress. He positioned himself as the reasonable party under attack. And it worked. Not completely, but enough. 2 minor clients paused contracts. 1 delayed renewal. Pressure began shifting back toward me. For the first time since the injunction, I felt something close to losing. Not legally, strategically. Momentum had changed. And momentum matters more than truth in the short term. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by documents that no longer felt as solid as they had days before. For the first time, doubt entered. Not about what happened, about whether I could prove it fully. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. "Is this Natalie Mercer?" "Yes." A pause. Then a voice I did not recognize said something that changed everything again. "I think I have what they missed." And just like that, the game shifted again. "I think I have what they missed." Those words did not feel dramatic in the moment, they felt precise. Who is this? I asked. My name is Lila Grant, the voice said. I worked as a contract paralegal under Stuart Bell's firm for 6 months. I am not calling to help you emotionally. I am calling because I do not want my name attached to what they tried to do. That was the first thing I trusted about her. Not sympathy, distance. We met the next morning in a quiet public library, the kind of place where voices stay low and decisions feel heavier. Lila arrived with a slim black folder, nothing excessive, nothing theatrical, just enough. I was assigned to formatting succession packets and backdating acknowledgement structures, she said calmly. At first, I assumed it was normal cleanup work. Then I noticed inconsistencies between instruction emails and the documents themselves. She opened the folder. Inside were printed email threads, internal notes, and something far more valuable than any of it. A document log. Not a copy, a system-generated log. It showed when files were created, modified, exported, and most importantly, when signature pages were inserted into finalized packets. My pulse slowed, not sped up, because this was it. Indisputable. You understand what this means, I said. Yes, she replied. It shows that the final succession packet presented as complete was assembled after partial execution. It also shows that your signature page was never part of the finalized document at the time authority was claimed. Not missing, never included. That distinction mattered more than anything, because it proved intent. They knew it was incomplete, I said. They did, she answered. Simone joined us within the hour. She reviewed the materials without speaking for several minutes, her focus narrowing in a way I had come to recognize as dangerous for the other side. This is structural proof, she said finally. Not interpretation, not testimony, structure. She looked at Lila. Are you willing to submit a sworn statement? Yes, Lila said, on one condition. Simone raised an eyebrow, which is that this is used fully, she said. No quiet settlement, no private resolution. I want it on record. I felt something shift inside me. Not revenge. Alignment. You will have that, I said. Within 2 days, Simone filed an expanded evidentiary motion supported by Lila's sworn affidavit, the document logs, and cross-referenced timestamps from the bank submissions Laura had flagged earlier. This time, the response from Grant's legal team was slower, because there was no way to argue around sequence. Sequence does not lie. The second hearing felt different from the first. Less theatrical, more final. Grant did not look at me when we entered. My mother did, but not with anger, with something colder, recognition, as if she finally understood that this was no longer about control. It was about exposure. Simone presented the document logs first, step by step, creation, modification, insertion, export, submission, each timestamp aligning with actions already taken before legal completion. Then Lila testified, clear, measured, unshaken. She described instructions to adjust formatting to align appearance with prior execution. She described the absence of my signature page at the time final packets were circulated. She described the pressure to move quickly. Grant's attorney tried to challenge her credibility. Temporary contract worker, he said. Limited understanding of full legal context. Lila did not react. I understand timestamps, she said. They do not require interpretation. That line ended it. Then came the financial link. Laura's testimony connected the document timeline to the attempted reserve transfer. Not just irregular, premature, dependent on authority that did not exist. And finally, Simone did something I did not expect. She introduced the personal debt. Through subpoenaed financial tracing, she showed that the holding account Grant attempted to move funds into was directly linked to an outstanding personal liability he had concealed. That was the missing motive. Not control, desperation. The room shifted, not emotionally, structurally, because now the narrative was complete. Fabrication, acceleration, attempted extraction, and misuse of authority. The judge did not take long. The ruling was not loud. It was precise. Invalid succession claim. Immediate restoration of shared control pending formal restructuring. Full forensic audit authorized. Referral for further review of potential financial misconduct. Stuart Bell's firm flagged for professional conduct investigation. And most importantly, a statement entered into record that actions taken prior to full execution were knowingly premature and materially misleading. Knowingly. That word sealed it. Grant exhaled like something inside him had finally collapsed. My mother closed her eyes briefly, not in grief, in calculation again. But this time there was nothing left to calculate. After the hearing, Grant approached me outside. For a moment he looked like the version of him I had known as a child. Then it disappeared. You could have walked away, he said. No, I replied. You could have stopped. He shook his head slowly. You always needed to be right. I met his gaze. No, I needed it to be true. He did not answer. He did not need to. Because for the first time, the truth was no longer something I had to defend. It was something he could not escape. And just like that, the balance shifted. Not back to where it was. Forward to something entirely new. The collapse did not happen all at once. It unfolded, piece by piece, exactly the way the truth had been built. The forensic audit began within days. Independent, unbiased, unforgiving. Every account, every document, every movement reviewed under a lens that did not care about family narratives or emotional explanations. What they found was worse than I had imagined. Not because of scale, because of intent. Grant had not just attempted one transfer. He had structured multiple pathways, layered, timed, designed to move funds in increments that would avoid immediate detection if executed over several weeks. The initial attempt had failed because of the injunction, but the system had been prepared. That mattered, because preparation proves planning, and planning proves knowledge. The holding account linked directly to his personal debt. Significant, hidden, accumulated through failed investments he had never disclosed. My mother was not listed on the accounts, but her involvement appeared elsewhere. Communication, coordination, timing, not the architect, but not unaware. Stuart Bell's firm moved quickly to distance itself. Too quickly, which only made it worse. Internal emails surfaced showing awareness of incomplete execution risk. They had known, and they had proceeded anyway. The consequences followed. Not dramatically, not loudly, systematically. Grant was removed from all operational authority, not temporarily, permanently. The company board structure was reinstated under court supervision. Controls tightened, access restricted, every decision documented. He did not fight it, because there was nothing left to fight with. My mother withdrew from public involvement entirely. No statements, no explanations, just absence, which somehow said everything. Stuart Bell faced formal investigation. His reputation, once quiet and respected, began to fracture under scrutiny, not destroyed overnight, but permanently altered. And me, I stood in the middle of what was left, not victorious, not unchanged, clear. For the first time in my life, I was not reacting to my family. I was choosing my position within it, or outside it. The company stabilized slowly. Clients returned, not because of loyalty, because of transparency, because uncertainty had been replaced with structure again. Denise stepped into a formal operations leadership role. Ethan never came back. He resigned quietly after the second hearing. No explanation, no apology, and strangely I did not need one. Because his betrayal had taught me something I would not have learned otherwise. Alignment without integrity does not hold. Lila joined our legal advisory team as a full-time compliance specialist. Not because she needed the job, because she chose the standard. Teresa remained our external auditor, more respected than ever. And Laura, she sent me a short message weeks later. Sequence always tells the truth. She was right. Months passed. The house my father built no longer felt like home. Not because of what happened, because of what had been revealed. So I let it go, not as loss, as release. I built something else instead. Not just a business structure, a circle. People who chose truth over convenience, accountability over comfort, clarity over performance. A chosen family. Not perfect, not simple, but real. And one evening, standing alone in the office that used to feel like a battlefield, I realized something quiet and powerful. I did not win because I fought harder. I won because I refused to pretend, because I followed what was real all the way to the end, even when it meant losing everything I thought I was supposed to protect. So let me ask you something. If you were in my place, would you have stopped when your family asked you to stay quiet? Or would you have followed the truth, even knowing it would break everything? If this story stayed with you, if it made you think about loyalty, justice, and what family really means, share your thoughts below. I read them. And if you believe that truth deserves a voice even when it is uncomfortable, press like, subscribe, and share this with someone who understands that sometimes the hardest battles are not outside. They are inside the people you thought would never turn against you. Thank you for being here. And wherever you are in your own story, I hope you choose clarity over silence.